Subnautica Fauna Cladogram Part 3. Hello, we are continuing the categorization of all of Subnautica's animals by talking about the chordata, the chordates of 4546b. The most basal of those is the ghost leviathan, which I believe can tell us a lot about the common ancestor of xenochordates. Notice that it lacks proper jaws, instead only having the simplest of mouth parts, two of which open vertically and two horizontally, like a mix between a hagfish and a radiodont. It also swims in a corkscrew-like motion, a type of movement more like that of a sperm cell than of any fish or other sea creature. Swimming like that will make a creature prone to roll rotations, so I believe the two straight lateral horns are meant to stabilize it in the water. Lastly, I want you to notice its 4 eyes. 4 is the maximum number of eyes of all xenochordates, so I believe it is ancestral. Moving on, we've got the first major split in xenochordata, that between the plagiostoma, which have a mouth that opens sideways, and the orthostoma, which have a mouth that opens up and down, probably deriving of those lip flap things that their ghost leviathan looking common ancestor had. I have never seen a single instance of an animal evolving sideways jaws from upright ones or vice versa, so I assume that they evolved only once, with all creatures with similar jaws forming a monophyletic clade. Starting with a plagiostoma, we've got the penguin but also the boomerang and magmarang. The penguin is pretty self-explanatory, you can tell by looking at it. But why the boomerang and magmarang? Well, look at the placement of their eyes. You'll notice that two of them are on the lower jaw. And you know what I'm about to say. No animal has ever had eyes on its lower jaw, nor have eyes ever migrated from the upper to the lower jaw. It is far more likely that these fish had a penguin-like ancestor with eyes at the size of the head, which at some point started swimming on its side, like a bizarro flatfish. Why would that happen? I don't know, but it's gotta be an advantage. It is at least plausible. Moving on to the orthostoma, of which the most basal member is the ampeel. Sure, it lost one pair of eyes and evolved electrocytes, but it swims in the same corkscrew motion that the ghost leviathan did, which I believe was ancestral. Now, I'm not an expert on hydrodynamics, so don't take my word for it, but unless you have a literal propeller for a tail, the corkscrew swimming style isn't as fast as the back and forth style. So I believe that as the animals of this planet needed to swim faster, they evolved a back and forth motion independently from one another and with many different styles. Was that a polytomy? Yes, sorry people, but I couldn't find enough evidence to put two of those more closely related to one another than with the third. Feel free to look into that if you want. But anyway, from the ancestral condition emerged three distinct swimming styles: the vertical swimmers, the horizontal swimmers, and the tentacled swimmers. For now, we will focus on the tentacled swimmers, as the vertical and horizontal ones are diverse enough to need their own part. The tentacled swimmers are unique not just in Subnautica but in evolution in general, as their tentacles grow around their tail than around their mouth. And yes, if you look closely, you will notice that one of the tentacles is right in the middle of all the others and seems to be somewhat bigger than the rest. That's the tail. How did that even happen? My best guess is that they used to have a skirt of cilia around their tail that over time grew longer and stronger and more complex, eventually becoming tentacles. This clade also has very developed forelimbs, basically arms, which also puzzles me, but I guess it can be an adaptation for a benthic lifestyle. The poster children of this group are of course the Sea Dragon Leviathan and the Sea Emperor Leviathan, the dragons of the game, as I have said before. And I also believe they are very closely related, perhaps even the same genus, or at the very least the same family, due to how similar they are. Next on, we've got the research specimen. Once again, it is an incomplete skeleton with too little information to go by. And to add insult to injury, it is the tail end that it's missing. You know, the part that we need in order to determine what kind of swimmer it is. In fact, it can just as easily be a vertical swimmer, probably a relative of the lava lizard, or a horizontal swimmer, specifically a basal brachiophoran. The reason I ended up classifying it as a tentacled swimmer is because it has both 4 eyes and arms. The vertical and horizontal swimmers lost their eyes and developed arm-like forelimbs independently. And although it is not impossible for the arm development to predate the loss of one pair of eyes, the extant members of those clades combine those two traits with no exception. So for that reason alone, I consider it slightly more likely that the research specimen is a tentacled swimmer. The final member of the tentacled swimmers is the cuttlefish. This looks like a tentacled swimmer that has been domesticated. It's tiny compared to its relatives, it has rounded baby-like features, it lacks any kind of defense, it has reduced to non-existent limbs, and it experiences behavior aligned with domestication, like showing no fear when in danger and being extremely good at understanding the body language of people. It is also only found in ancient structures, I think, which further supports this hypothesis. As for why it is more closely related to the research specimen than any other tentacled swimmer, well, I figured since the architects were already familiar with that animal, that it makes sense it would be something they would have domesticated. Oh, but what about the Sea Emperor Leviathan, you might say? They were familiar with that one too. Why couldn't the cuttlefish be one of those? Because for an animal to be domesticated, people need to be able to make it reproduce in captivity, which we know that the architects didn't do with the Sea Emperor Leviathan. Before closing, I would like to give a brief honorable mention to both the Warper and the Gargantuan fossil. The Warper may look like a tentacled swimmer at first glance, but it is fully artificial, and the Gargantuan Leviathan is once again a skeleton with not enough information to go by, so I can't exactly put it anywhere at all. This is it for this video, and next time we will talk about the vertical swimmers. See you then, unless I see you anywhere else before. Goodbye.